Hello, everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin.
Every time snow piles up along the guardrail on County Line Road, I still slow down without thinking. Not because of the ice, not because of the curve, but because of what I saw there one winter night when someone I tried to help should not have been there at all. I used to work overnight routes for a small medical supply company based outside Wausau, Wisconsin. It was quiet work, boxes of equipment, late pickups, empty roads, the kind of job where your whole world shrinks down to headlights, coffee, and whatever podcast keeps you awake between stops. After a few winters, I thought I understood snow. I thought I knew how it softened everything, how it made even bad roads feel calmer, slower, almost forgiving if you respected it. That's the lie winter tells you. It makes everything look the same, and you forget what's hidden underneath. The night it happened, the forecast had been wrong. Again. By the time I left my last drop-off, the sky had gone flat and white, and the wind was already pushing snow across the fields in long, low sheets. County Line Road doesn't have street lights, just reflective posts every few hundred feet, and the dark outlines of trees set back from the shoulder. My van's heater was blasting, but my hands still hurt from gripping the wheel too hard. The wipers were on high and barely keeping up. It felt like driving through the inside of a shaken snow globe. I had driven that stretch hundreds of times. Straight shot, gentle bends, a shallow ditch on either side before the land dropped away into frozen fields. Muscle memory carried me forward while my eyes stayed locked on the narrow tunnel of visibility in front of the van. That's why I almost missed the car. I caught the flash of color out of the corner of my eye, just a dull orange pulse half buried in white. I hit the brakes harder than I should have and felt the van slide before the tires caught. Hazard lights. Weak ones. The car was angled off the road, nose toward the ditch, snow piled high along the passenger side like it had been there longer than the storm suggested. For a second, I thought about driving on. That's the part that still bothers me. Just 1 second where I imagined getting back to the depot late, filing a report, telling myself someone else would come along. Then I pictured someone sitting in that car, watching the snow climb higher, waiting for help that never showed up. I pulled over. Up close, the car looked wrong. The back window was completely buried, just a curved slice of glass clear where the rear wiper had been moving before it stopped. The driver's door hung open an inch, rocking slightly in the wind. The hazard lights blinked slower than they should have, like a tired heartbeat. I left the van idling and grabbed my flashlight. "Hello?" I called, leaning toward the open door. "Are you okay?" The wind answered first, swirling snow into my face. Then a voice came from the other side of the car. "Please, don't leave." She was sitting on the ground near the passenger door, half buried where the plow had thrown snow earlier. Her coat looked warm at a glance, but was soaked through, the fabric dark and stiff with ice. Her hair was plastered to her cheeks in frozen clumps. When she looked up at me, her eyes were too bright, that glassy, unfocused look people get when their body is starting to shut things down. "I'm not leaving," I said quickly. "We'll get you warm." I crouched beside her, trying not to show how light she felt when I helped her up. "Is anyone else with you?" I asked. Her eyes flicked toward the car, toward the back seat, then back to me. "He's always right there," she whispered. That single word made the hair on my arms rise under my jacket. I shined my flashlight through the open door, sweeping the beam across the seats. The inside of the car was coated in frost, the kind that forms when warm breath freezes against cold glass. The windshield was feathered white on the inside. The back seat was empty. No bags, no blanket, no sign anyone had been sitting there. "Ma'am," I said carefully, "there's no one in the car." She shook her head hard, like a child refusing to hear something they didn't want to accept. "You just can't see him when the lights are on." I told myself she was hypothermic, confused, saying things that didn't mean anything. I guided her to the van and sat her in the passenger seat, cranking the heater toward her and wrapping my spare blanket around her shoulders. Her hand clamped around my wrist, bare skin, ice cold. For a second, I almost pulled away, but the way she held on felt desperate, grounding, like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. "What's your name?" I asked. She hesitated. "You know my name." "No, I don't. I'm just trying to help you." She looked at me then, really looked, and said my name. Not my last name, not a guess, my first name, the way my mother says it when she's disappointed. The wind gusted, blowing snow sideways across the road until everything vanished in white. I told myself she must have seen my name badge, except my jacket was zipped up and my badge was underneath. I got her settled and called dispatch. The signal was weak, but enough to get through. I gave them the location, her condition, the stranded car. I didn't mention the invisible passenger. "Help is on the way," the dispatcher said. "Stay in your vehicle." While we waited, the storm pressed in harder. The windows fogged at the edges. The hazard lights on her car blinked slower and slower. "He doesn't like hospitals," she said suddenly. "Who?" I asked before I could stop myself. She nodded toward the windshield. "He gets stuck here," she said, "every winter." Headlights appeared behind us then, cutting through the snow. Relief washed over me, until I realized there was no vehicle shape behind them, just two bright points floating closer. The lights slid closer in a perfectly steady line, not bouncing the way headlights do on a rough county road. No engine sound reached us, not even the muffled growl you'd expect through wind and snow. Just those two pale circles widening in my side mirror, bright enough to turn the inside of the van into a dim, bluish glow. I leaned forward, squinting, trying to catch the outline of a hood, the flare of a grill, anything solid. There was nothing. The woman beside me lifted her hand and pressed her palm flat against the inside of the windshield. The glass squeaked under her skin. "He's coming," she whispered. And in her voice there was no panic anymore, only something tired, like this was a routine she'd repeated too many times. The lights drew level with the van. As they passed, the world went wrong. Not loud wrong, not dramatic, just wrong. The wind vanished, the engine hum disappeared under my feet. Even the slow tick of my own hazard lights seemed to stop mid-blink. The snow outside looked frozen in place, suspended in the air like dust in a sunbeam. For a single beat, everything held perfectly still. And in that absolute pause, I saw it. A handprint on the outside of my windshield. Not hers, not mine. It appeared as a pale outline in frost, like breath had condensed into the shape of fingers and palms. palm. The fingers were too long, the spacing too wide, the tips slightly tapered, as if whatever made that print didn't have normal joints. The woman's palm on the inside matched it, like two hands pressed through glass. My throat locked. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even blink. The floating lights continued forward, gliding toward her half-buried car, stopping beside it as if examining it. Then they winked out, all at once, like someone turned them off. Sound slammed back into the world, wind roaring, van idling, my own breath rasping too loud in the cab. My chest hurt like I'd been holding air in too long. The woman's hand slid down the glass, leaving a clear smear that immediately began to frost at the edges. "He found it," she said softly. "Maybe he won't have to try again." I stared through the windshield at the road ahead, heart thrashing. I wanted to ask what she meant. I wanted to demand an explanation. Instead, I did what people do when their brain refuses to accept what their eyes just saw. I focused on practical things. "Help is coming," I said, like repeating it would make it more true. "Stay awake, keep breathing." She didn't answer. She kept watching her own car, blinking those slow, exhausted blinks. 10 minutes later, real headlights finally appeared, yellow and steady. A county plow followed by an ambulance crawling through the whiteout like something stubborn and human. The paramedics moved fast, professional, faces half covered with scarves. They lifted her onto a stretcher and wrapped her in foil blankets that crinkled like candy wrappers. One of them asked her questions, name, date, where she'd been headed, while another checked her pulse and oxygen. She gave half answers that drifted off. When the lead paramedic turned to me to thank me for stopping, I found myself asking the first question that had been tightening in my mind since that silent moment. "Do people crash here a lot?" I asked. He glanced over my shoulder toward the mile marker, toward the half-buried car, and for a moment his expression shifted. Not fear, recognition. "This stretch? Yeah, every winter. Same spot, give or take." He nodded toward the car as if it was a detail he'd seen in 100 forms. "Last big one was a few years back. Family, bad storm. They pulled everyone out, but the wife kept insisting her husband was still in there, shocked as weird things." I didn't tell him about the frost handprint. I didn't tell him she'd said my name like she'd known me. I watched them close the ambulance doors. Red and blue lights smeared through falling snow as they pulled away, swallowed by the storm within seconds. The plow driver chained the stranded car and dragged it up and out with a grinding groan, disappearing down the road like it was just another piece of winter cleanup. When the road was clear enough for me to move, I drove back toward town at a crawl. The whole time, my eyes kept flicking to the windshield, to the place where that print had been. By the time I reached the depot, the frost had crept across the glass in normal patterns, as if nothing had touched it. I finished my paperwork. I told my supervisor the storm slowed me down. I did not mention the woman. I did not mention the lights. The next day, the car was gone from the ditch. A clean ridge of plowed snow was the only sign anything had happened there at all. 2 days after that, I told them I couldn't do night routes anymore. People think snow erases things, that it smooths over problems, covers up mistakes, makes the world look clean again. But snow doesn't erase. Snow preserves. It holds impressions long after they should be gone. Because after that night, it didn't end. It shifted. The first time I noticed something was wrong again was a week later, after a fresh storm. I woke before dawn in my apartment, the kind of wake-up where you don't remember the dream, but your body still feels trapped in it. I stood at my bedroom window, staring down at the parking lot glowing under a street lamp. Fresh snow, smooth. And there, below my window, were prints. Not leading anywhere, not coming from anywhere, just 4 deep impressions in a neat line directly under the glass, toes pointed toward the building like someone had been standing there, looking up. I stared so long my eyes watered. Then I threw on boots and ran downstairs, heart pounding, half expecting to catch someone walking away. When I reached the spot, the prints were still there. Perfect, sharp-edged, too sharp for how hard the wind had been blowing. I stood over them and felt my stomach drop further. The tread pattern, little triangles with a circle in the center. The same pattern I'd seen in the snowbank beside that stranded car. I told myself it was coincidence. People in the same town buy boots from the same stores. That was logical. That was comforting. And it was the first lie I had to tell myself to keep functioning. Because the next snowfall, the prints came back. This time, not 4, 8. Overlapping slightly, like whoever stood there had shifted weight back and forth, waiting. And the snowfall after that, I woke up to the sound of a soft tap on glass. Not loud, not aggressive, just one patient test, like a fingertip touching a surface to see if it would respond. I didn't open the blinds. I sat in bed with my breath held until the furnace kicked on and the normal apartment sounds returned, until I convinced myself I'd imagined it. When morning came, I looked. The prints were closer, pressed right up against the building wall under my window, toes nearly touching the brick. No approach, no exit, just that neat line of impressions like someone appeared there, waited, then vanished. I bought a cheap motion light that weekend and stuck it outside. I ordered a basic camera and aimed it at the spot. It made me feel safer for exactly 2 nights. Then the camera footage glitched. Not fully black, not dead, just a smear of static whenever the motion light triggered. The timestamp kept running cleanly while the image went grainy and distorted, like the sensor couldn't decide what it was seeing. And in the middle of that static, once, only once, I saw something that made my blood go cold. A pale shape in the lower part of the frame. Not a face, not a clear body, just the suggestion of fingers stretched too long, sliding upward along the wall under my window. I stared so long my eyes watered. Then I threw on boots and ran downstairs, heart pounding, half expecting to catch someone walking away. When I reached the spot, the prints were still there. Perfect, sharp-edged, too sharp for how hard the wind had been blowing. I stood over them and felt my stomach drop further. The tread pattern, little triangles with a circle in the center. The same pattern I'd seen in the snowbank beside that stranded car. I told myself it was coincidence. People in the same town buy boots from the same stores. That was logical. That was comforting. And it was the first lie I had to tell myself to keep functioning. Because the next snowfall, the prints came back. This time not 4, 8, overlapping slightly, like whoever stood there had shifted weight back and forth, waiting. And the snowfall after that, I woke up to the sound of a soft tap on glass. Not loud, not aggressive, just one patient test, like a fingertip touching a surface to see if it would respond. I didn't open the blinds. I sat in bed with my breath held until the furnace kicked on and the normal apartment sounds returned, until I convinced myself I'd imagined it. When morning came, I looked. The prints were closer, pressed right up against the building wall under my window, toes nearly touching the brick. No approach, no exit, Just that neat line of impressions, like someone appeared there, waited, then vanished. I bought a cheap motion light that weekend and stuck it outside. I ordered a basic camera and aimed it at the spot. It made me feel safer for exactly 2 nights. Then the camera footage glitched. Not fully black, not dead, just a smear of static whenever the motion light triggered. The timestamp kept running cleanly while the image went grainy and distorted, like the sensor couldn't decide what it was seeing. And in the middle of that static, once, only once, I saw something that made my blood go cold. A pale shape in the lower part of the frame. Not a face, not a clear body, just the suggestion of fingers stretched too long, sliding upward along the wall under my window. I didn't sleep in my bedroom after that. I moved to the couch with the TV on low. I told myself it was temporary. Then, one night, the power flickered. Just a brief dip, a blink. The TV went dark, the room fell silent, and for that same heartbeat-long pause, I heard it. The absence, that deep, total silence like the world had been muted, and beneath it, a faint sound like snow compressing. Not outside. Inside the building, in the hallway. 3 slow steps. Pause. 3 more, coming closer. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I lay there on the couch with my eyes fixed on the dark rectangle of the hallway entrance, listening as the steps stopped just beyond it. The motion light outside clicked on. The glow leaked faintly through the edge of the blinds, washing the living room in a weak amber haze. And in that light, something passed across the far wall. Not a shadow the way a person casts one. It stretched wrong, too tall, too narrow, like whatever made it wasn't fully standing upright. I squeezed my eyes shut, counting my breaths, telling myself this was panic, exhaustion, my brain connecting dots that didn't belong together.
When I opened them again, the wall was empty. The light outside went off. The silence returned. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I checked the camera. The footage from the moment the power flickered was there. Timestamp normal, audio intact, video warped. The hallway portion of the frame shimmered like heat haze, bending the straight lines of the walls into shallow curves. At exactly 2:14 a.m., the distortion deepened, compressing inward toward the camera. And then, for less than a second, the image sharpened. There was a hand pressed flat against the inside of my apartment door. Not on the knob, not reaching, just resting there, palm first, fingers spread. Too many fingers, 7, long and pale and slightly translucent, like frost layered over skin. The camera cut back to normal the instant the power stabilized. I didn't go to work that day. I packed a bag instead. I told myself I was being dramatic, but my body didn't believe that lie anymore. My hands shook as I folded clothes, as if they remembered how cold her grip had been in the van. I drove to my sister's place in Stevens Point, parked under a bright porch light, and slept for 12 hours straight. Nothing followed me there. No prints, no tapping, no distortions on her door camera. I stayed a week, then 2. Eventually, the fear dulled enough to feel manageable. That's how it gets you. Not by chasing, by waiting. I moved out of my apartment a month later. Different town, different route to work, day shift only.
I avoided County Line Road entirely, even when GPS tried to reroute me through it. Years passed. I told the story once, late at a bar, laughing at myself halfway through. No one laughed with me. Last winter, during the first heavy snowfall, I found something in my mailbox. No return address, just a folded piece of paper, damp at the edges. Inside was a charcoal rubbing, a handprint, 7 fingers, and beneath it, written in uneven block letters, was a single line: "He found another ride." I didn't check the camera footage that night. I didn't need to, because when I stood at the window, looking down at the untouched snow below, I could already see where it would be, waiting, not approaching, not leaving, just standing there, patient like winter itself. I stood there until my legs started to ache. The snow below my window was still smooth, unbroken, reflecting the yellow streetlight like a blank page. For a long moment, nothing happened, and I almost convinced myself that this was where it stopped, that the note was some cruel joke, that fear had finally gotten the better of me. Then, slowly, the surface changed, not with movement, with pressure. An indentation formed directly beneath the light, then another, not walking, not arriving, just appearing. 7-toed impressions pressed down into the snow, as if something had settled its weight there from above. I backed away from the glass, heart hammering so hard it made my vision pulse. I didn't scream, I didn't run. Some part of me understood with a certainty that felt ancient that reacting was exactly what it wanted. Whatever it was. It hadn't followed me from County Line Road. It hadn't been attached to the woman. It had been waiting for an exchange. A hand offered in winter, a ride given, a door opened when it should have stayed closed. That night, I didn't sleep in the apartment. I didn't even pack. I left the lights on, locked the door behind me, and drove until the sky began to pale and the snow turned gray instead of black. I live somewhere warm now, somewhere that doesn't know winter the way Wisconsin does. No snowbanks, no frost on glass, no silence so deep it presses on your ears. But every year, right around the time the first storms hit back home, I get a feeling I can't explain, like something far away has lifted its head, like a pattern has started again, because winter doesn't chase you, it waits for you to stop. And if you ever see someone stranded in the snow on a road that feels too quiet, you should know this. Sometimes helping isn't what it looks like. Sometimes it's an invitation. Story 2. The camp that didn't belong to anyone. I didn't plan on camping that night. That's the part I always come back to when I think about how close I came to something I still don't understand. I was driving home late from a job site near Elkins, West Virginia, cutting through a stretch of state forest to save time. It was mid-December, the kind of cold that settles into your bones long before snow actually falls. The road was empty, winding and poorly maintained, but I'd driven it enough times to trust it. Until my truck didn't. The engine sputtered once, then twice, and then the dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. I coasted as far as I could before the wheels crunched into gravel and the truck rolled to a stop near a narrow turnout. No cell service. I sat there for a minute, hands still on the wheel, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. The forest around me was completely silent, the kind of silence that feels intentional, like something is listening back. I had two options: stay in the truck and hope someone came along before morning, or walk. The nearest marked campground was about 2 miles back, according to the map I'd checked earlier that day. 2 miles didn't sound like much until you factored in the cold, the fading light, and the fact that the temperature was dropping fast. I grabbed my pack, locked the truck, and started walking. The road narrowed quickly, trees crowding closer on either side. The sky darkened from gray to that deep, heavy blue that comes just before night fully settles in. My breath fogged in front of me, each exhale louder than it should have been. After about 20 minutes, I saw it. A faint orange glow flickering through the trees off to the right. Firelight. Relief hit me so hard my knees actually went weak. Someone else was out here, someone with warmth, light, maybe a working phone. I called out as I stepped off the road, crunching through frozen leaves and light snow toward the glow. "Hello?" No answer. The camp came into view slowly, like it didn't want to be seen all at once. There was a fire burning low in a stone ring, embers glowing dull red. A tarp was strung between 2 trees, sagging under a dusting of snow. A pack sat near the fire, upright, neat, too neat. No footprints. That's what stopped me. The ground around the camp was undisturbed. No tracks leading in, no tracks leading out. Just smooth, lightly frosted earth, as if the camp had been placed there without anyone ever walking to it. "Hello?" I called again, quieter this time. The fire popped softly. I told myself the snow could have covered the tracks, that wind could erase things faster than you think. But the tarp was dry underneath. The pack looked recently placed, and there was a metal mug sitting near the fire, steam curling faintly from its surface. Someone had been here moments ago. I stepped closer, holding my flashlight low. Inside the tarp was a sleeping bag, neatly laid out, zipped closed. Not occupied, just prepared. That uneasy feeling crawled up my spine, the one you get when you realized you've walked into a space that wasn't meant for you. I should have left then. Instead, I made the second mistake of that night. I warmed my hands over the fire. The heat felt incredible, almost painful after the cold. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have found this place, how foolish it would be to turn away from warmth when night was settling in. That's when I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, not approaching the camp, circling it. The sound came from just beyond the firelight, leaves crunching in a careful rhythm, like whoever it was knew exactly how loud each step would be. I straightened up, heart pounding. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Sorry, my truck broke down. I saw your fire." The footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than before, thick enough that my ears rang. Then a voice spoke from the darkness. "You're not supposed to be here." It was a woman's voice, calm, flat, not angry, just stating a fact. "I didn't mean to intrude. I just need to get warm for a bit. I can leave if you want." There was a pause, long enough that I wondered if she'd gone. Then she stepped into the edge of the firelight. She was wearing winter clothes, jacket, gloves, boots, but none of them matched. Different colors, different styles, like they'd been collected over time. Her face was pale, almost colorless, and her eyes reflected the firelight in a way that made them look strangely bright. She didn't look at me, she looked at the fire. "This camp isn't mine," she said. I frowned. "Oh, I thought it doesn't belong to anyone," she continued. "It just shows up." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the cold. "Then why are you here?" I asked. She finally turned her head toward me. Up close, I could see that her lips were cracked and dry, and her skin looked tight, like it had been stretched thin. "Because it lets me stay," she said, "most nights." Something in her tone told me not to ask what happened on the nights it didn't. The fire flared suddenly, sparks jumping upward, and in that brief burst of light, I saw something behind her, movement where the darkness between the trees seemed to fold inward, as if the forest itself was leaning closer to listen. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to go back to the road, to take my chances with the cold. But my body hesitated, caught between fear and the promise of warmth, and that hesitation may have saved me or doomed me.
She tilted her head slightly. "It's going to notice you soon," she said. I opened my mouth to ask what it was, and then stopped myself. The word felt dangerous. "I didn't see any signs," I said instead. "No tracks, no road markers. This place isn't on any map." "That's why it works," she replied. "People don't look for things that aren't supposed to be there." The fire crackled low, throwing shadows that stretched too far up the trees, bending where they shouldn't. The forest beyond the light felt closer now, like the space between trunks had tightened. I shifted my weight and felt the frozen ground crunch under my boot. Her eyes flicked down instantly. The sound echoed longer than it should have. "That's loud," she said. "I'm sorry," I whispered, even though I didn't know why I was apologizing. She took a slow step backward, keeping one foot in the firelight and one in the dark, like she was careful not to fully leave either. "When it notices," she said, "it listens first." My mouth went dry. "What notices?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached down and nudged the metal mug with her boot. It tipped slightly, and the steam that had been curling upward vanished instantly, as if something colder than the air had passed through it. The fire dimmed. Not out, just quieter. I became acutely aware of how still everything else was. No wind, no distant animals, not even the faint hiss of snow settling in branches. Then I heard it. A second set of footsteps. Not hers, not mine. These were slower, heavier, each one compressing the ground with a soft, wet crunch, like snow being pressed from above rather than stepped on. They didn't circle the camp. They came straight toward it. The woman's shoulders sagged. "It's early," she muttered. "That's not fair." I backed away from the fire, my flashlight shaking in my hand. "What is coming?"
She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time her expression cracked. Regret. "Someone who followed the warmth once," she said, "just like you." The footsteps stopped at the edge of the light. Nothing entered it. The darkness there felt thick, layered, like depth without distance. My flashlight beam refused to penetrate it, the light flattening against the black as if it had hit a wall. A shape shifted, not fully visible, just enough movement to suggest something tall, hunched slightly forward, occupying space it hadn't a moment before. The fire guttered again. I smelled something metallic, old, like frozen blood on steel. "You should go," she said quickly. "Now. Don't run, don't look back, and don't take anything from the camp." "What about you?" I asked. She shook her head once. "It already knows me." The shape leaned closer. The pressure in the air increased, pushing against my chest, making it hard to draw a full breath. My ears rang softly like I was underwater. I took one step back. The shape shifted in response. Another step. The fire flared suddenly, bright and violent, sparks exploding upward, and in that flash I saw it. Not clearly, just enough. A body bent at the wrong angles, limbs too long and uneven, as if assembled from memory rather than anatomy. Its surface looked like packed snow over something darker, cracked and veined. Where its face should have been was a smooth slope, interrupted only by a vertical slit that opened slightly as it leaned forward, listening. The woman stepped fully into the firelight. It recoiled, not in fear, in irritation. "Go," she snapped, "before it decides you're easier." I didn't hesitate again. I turned and walked back toward the road, each step measured, deliberate, forcing myself not to break into a run, even as every nerve screamed at me to move faster. Behind me, I heard the fire die, not fade, die. The darkness swallowed the light completely, and with it came a sound I'll never forget. Not a growl, not a scream, a long, slow inhale, like the forest itself drawing breath. I kept walking. The road appeared ahead like a lifeline, pale and narrow under the dim sky. I didn't stop until my boots hit gravel and my legs began to shake uncontrollably. When I finally dared to glance back, there was nothing there. No fire, no tarp, no glow, just trees. I spent the night in my truck, wrapped in every piece of clothing I had, shaking until morning. At first light, I walked back to where the camp had been. There was no sign of it, no ashes, no flattened ground, no footprints, except one. A single impression pressed deep into the frost where the fire had been. Not a boot, not a shoe, just a long, uneven shape, like something had stood there without feet at all. I don't drive that road anymore, and when winter comes and I see a fire glowing somewhere it shouldn't be, I keep going, because some camps don't belong to anyone, and some warmth isn't meant to be shared. I didn't stay to look any longer. That single impression in the frost was enough to confirm what my instincts had already decided sometime in the night, that whatever I'd walked into out there wasn't finished with the place, only paused. I reached my truck just as the sky was beginning to lighten, that dull gray blue that comes before real morning. The engine turned over on the first try, a sound so normal and reassuring that it almost made me laugh. Almost. I drove back toward town slowly, every sense still stretched thin, half expecting to see that orange glow again somewhere in my mirrors. I didn't. The road was empty. When I finally got cell service, I called for a tow, then sat in a gas station parking lot until the sun was fully up, hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that tasted like burnt plastic. The warmth didn't help, neither did the noise of other people coming and going. I tried to explain what happened to the tow driver when he arrived, but the words fell apart as soon as I said them out loud. A camp that wasn't there, a woman who didn't belong to it, something in the woods that listened. He just nodded, polite but distant, the way people do when they're waiting for you to finish a story they don't believe. Before we pulled away, I glanced once more toward the road that led back into the forest. In daylight, it looked harmless, ordinary, just another stretch of trees and cold ground. A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I checked local news, police reports, anything about missing people in the area. It didn't take long to find something. 3 winters back, a woman had been reported missing after her car broke down along that same road. She'd left the vehicle to look for help. Search teams found no tracks leading away from it, despite fresh snow at the time. The article included a photo. Her jacket was mismatched, different colors, different styles. I closed the page and didn't open it again. I don't camp in winter anymore. I don't stop for fires in the woods, and when I see a glow somewhere it shouldn't be, deep in the trees, far from roads or campgrounds, I remember her words. It lets me stay. Some things don't hunt, they wait, and they're very good at making you think you found them by accident. Story 3. The house that still registers on GPS. The first time I noticed the address, it was already too late to turn around. I was driving rideshare to pay off a surgery bill I didn't want to talk about, working nights because the tips were better and the city felt less crowded after midnight. Around 1:40 a.m., my phone buzzed with a pickup request that didn't quite look right. No street name, just a coordinate pin and a house number. I hesitated long enough for the app to warn me I had 10 seconds to accept before it reassigned the ride. Against my better judgment, I tapped accept. The GPS rerouted instantly, pulling me off a well-lit arterial road and onto a narrower residential street I didn't recognize, even though I'd lived in the city for years. The houses thinned quickly. Streetlights stopped altogether. The temperature dropped hard enough that my windshield fogged at the edges. The app insisted the pickup was less than 2 minutes away. I passed a row of dark homes with modern siding and motion lights, then a construction fence sagging under old snow. After that, the street should have ended. Instead, it kept going. The asphalt changed texture, smoother, almost waxy under my tires, like it had been sealed recently. But there were no tire tracks ahead of me, no fresh snow either, just bare road bordered by untouched drifts on both sides. The GPS voice chimed, arriving at pickup location. The pin sat in the middle of the screen. In front of me was a house that didn't belong there. It was set back farther from the road than the others, half obscured by bare trees, its porch light glowing a weak yellow. The structure itself looked wrong in small ways that added up quickly. Windows not evenly spaced, siding that didn't match, a roofline that dipped where it shouldn't. But the thing that made my chest tighten was the driveway. It was shoveled, clean down to the concrete. No footprints, no tire tracks, just a perfect corridor from the street to the garage door, as if someone had cleared it and then erased themselves. I put the car in park and checked the rider name. Evelyn. No profile photo, no rating. The app showed her standing right on the porch. The front door opened before I could decide whether to cancel. A woman stepped out, maybe late 30s, bundled in a coat that looked too thin for the cold. She didn't wave, didn't check her phone. She just walked straight toward my car. I locked the doors without thinking. She stopped inches from the passenger window and leaned down, her breath fogging the glass from the outside. "You're late," she said calmly. Her voice was perfectly clear through the closed window. "I just accepted the ride," I replied, forcing my voice steady. "Where are you headed?" She tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something behind her. "Anywhere is fine. I just need to leave." I glanced at the house again. The porch light flickered once, dimmed, then steadied. My app chimed. Trip timer started. The doors unlocked. I swear I didn't touch anything. She opened the passenger door and got in, bringing with her a wave of cold so intense my steering wheel burned under my palms. Her seatbelt clicked into place. The app populated a destination, not an address, just a straight line out of the neighborhood. No ETA, no distance. I pulled away. The moment my tires left the driveway, the house vanished from my rearview mirror. Not gradually, not swallowed by trees, just gone, replaced by empty snow and darkness like it had never been there at all. I didn't ask questions, neither did she. She stared straight ahead, hands folded in her lap, condensation forming on the inside of the window beside her in the faint outline of a face that wasn't hers. After a mile, my radio cut out. After 2, my phone lost signal completely. That's when she finally spoke again. "You shouldn't use the app at night," she said. "It still remembers places that don't." I felt the road dip. Then the car slowed on its own. The GPS recalculated, and behind us, something lit up the snow. The headlights behind us weren't bright. That was the first thing that struck me. They weren't throwing beams or cutting through the darkness the way normal headlights do. They sat low and wide, diffused, like light filtered through ice. 2 dull halos drifting closer without sound. I checked my mirrors again, pulse jumping. No engine noise, no reflection on the road, just light. "Is someone following us?" I asked. Evelyn didn't turn her head. "They always do once you start moving," she said. "That's why I don't like waiting." The road ahead narrowed, the snowbanks on either side creeping closer until the asphalt felt like a ribbon laid down just for us. I tried the brakes. They worked, but sluggishly, like pushing through thick mud. The app vibrated, rerouting. The straight-line destination twisted, bending off the road entirely, pointing into what should have been an undeveloped wooded area. My speed dropped again, despite my foot pressing harder on the gas. "I'm not going off-road," I said, more sharply than I meant to. "You need to give me a real address." She finally looked at me. Up close, her face wasn't frightening. That almost made it worse. No dead eyes, no unnatural grin, just exhaustion, the kind you see in hospital waiting rooms at 3 in the morning. "It won't let me," she said. "It never does." The headlights behind us flared brighter. For a moment, the inside of my car glowed pale white, every surface overexposed. In that instant, I saw something in the rearview mirror that made my stomach drop. There was no car, no hood, no grille, just the suggestion of a shape where a vehicle should be. Snow and ice packed into a rough outline, edges too soft, too wrong. And behind where a windshield would be, movement. Not a face exactly, more like depth, like looking into a room with the lights off and knowing someone is standing just out of sight. I swerved. The tires hit something solid with a bone-jarring thump, and the car skidded sideways before stopping. Silence slammed down so suddenly my ears rang. The headlights behind us cut out. The radio snapped back on mid-sentence from a late-night talk show, the host laughing at something that felt wildly inappropriate. I sat there shaking, breath coming out in short, sharp bursts. Evelyn was gone. The passenger door stood open, snow drifting lazily inside. The seat was empty, no indentation, no warmth, just frost creeping across the upholstery where she'd been sitting seconds earlier. My app chimed again. Trip complete. I slammed the door shut and drove. I didn't stop until I hit the main road, streetlights blazing like a lifeline. I pulled into a gas station and sat there with the engine running, hands locked around the wheel until the shaking eased enough for me to move. When I checked the ride history, the trip was listed as completed. Pickup time, drop-off time, distance traveled, 0.0 miles. No address, no rider profile, just a gray placeholder where the map preview should have been. I reported it through the app, wrote out everything in the little text box until my fingers cramped. A generic response came back an hour later, apologizing for a GPS error and thanking me for my feedback. 2 days after that, I got an email. It said my account had been flagged for abnormal activity. The pickup location I'd accepted no longer existed in their system. Neither did the street. But the thing that finally made me uninstall the app for good came a week later when I was driving home from work just after midnight. Snow had fallen earlier that evening, the fresh kind that smooths everything into clean, white shapes. As I passed through a neighborhood on the edge of town, I saw a single driveway shoveled perfectly down to bare concrete. No footprints, no tire tracks, and on my phone, without touching it, a notification slid onto the screen. New ride request. Pickup distance, 0.1 miles. I didn't accept. I didn't slow down. But in my rear view mirror, just for a second, I saw the porch light flick on, and something step forward into the snow. Story 4. The room that the hotel still won't number. I didn't choose that hotel. That's important, because it would be easier if I could blame curiosity or bad planning or one too many drinks. But the truth is, it was the only place with vacancy after a winter storm shut down half the interstate and turned a routine work trip into an overnight problem. I was driving east through western Nebraska, the kind of stretch where towns thin out until gas stations feel like landmarks. By the time the snow started coming down sideways, I'd already passed 3 exits with nothing open. When the hotel sign finally appeared through the white haze, I took it without thinking.
One long, low building, 2 stories, sodium lights buzzing in the parking lot. The name was something generic, comfort, lodge, suites, one of those. Inside, the lobby smelled like wet carpet and coffee that had been sitting too long. The front desk clerk looked exhausted, the kind of tired you only see during storms. "I've got 1 room left," he said, before I finished asking. "Top floor." "Fine," I said. "Anything's fine." He hesitated, fingers resting on the keyboard. "Just, if the heat acts weird, let me know." That should have been my warning. The elevator was out, so I took the stairs. The second-floor hallway was quieter than it should have been, even for nearly midnight. No TVs through the walls, no doors opening or closing, just the soft hum of vents and the dull thud of my boots on industrial carpet. My key read 214. The rooms went 210, 212, then jumped. 214 was at the very end of the hall, past a stretch of wall that felt longer than it looked from the stairwell. When I unlocked the door, cold air rolled out like a breath being released. The heat was off. That wasn't unusual. Hotels do that to save money. I set my bag down and flipped on the lights. The room looked normal at first glance. Queen bed, desk, TV bolted to the wall, bathroom door ajar. Then I noticed the thermostat. It wasn't digital. It was an old metal dial, the kind you'd expect in a school gym or basement, mounted crookedly near the window. The needle was buried past the lowest marking, resting against a word etched on the metal that I couldn't quite read in the dim light. I turned the heat all the way up. The vents rattled, coughed, then went silent. I sighed, peeled off my coat, and called the front desk. It rang longer than it should have. Finally, the clerk picked up. "I think my heat's broken," I said. "Room 214. There was a pause. Not a dropped call pause, a listening pause. "Sir," he said slowly, "are you sure that's the number on your key?" I glanced back at the card. "Yes." Another pause. "I'll be right up," he said. "Please don't touch the thermostat." That made my skin prickle. While I waited, I noticed something else wrong. The room had no artwork. Every other hotel room I'd ever stayed in had some generic print, boats, flowers, abstract shapes. This room had bare walls, lighter rectangles showing where frames had once hung and been removed. The longer I stood there, the colder it felt. Not drafty, cold, like standing near an open freezer. When the knock came, I nearly jumped out of my skin. The clerk stood in the doorway, keys jangling nervously in his hand. He didn't step inside. He reached past me, turned the thermostat down, and shut the vent. "That unit shouldn't be active," he said. "Then why did you rent it?" I asked. He swallowed. "We didn't. Not usually." I laughed once, short and sharp. "I'm exhausted. If the heat doesn't work, just move me." He shook his head. "No other rooms. Storm knocked out power in the west wing. This one's insulated." He avoided looking at the far corner of the room. I followed his gaze. The carpet there was darker, not wet, worn, like something heavy had been dragged over it again and again. "I'll bring you extra blankets," he said quickly. "If anything feels off, anything at all, call the desk. Don't leave the room." "Why wouldn't I leave the room?" I asked. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Elevator's still down. Stairs get icy at night." He left before I could press him.
I locked the door. That was my second mistake. The blankets helped at first. I layered them, lay fully clothed on top of the bed, scrolling my phone until my eyes burned. Outside, the wind howled against the building, rattling the glass hard enough to make the glass buzz. Sometime after 2 a.m., the heat kicked on by itself. Not warm air, just movement. A low, steady rushing sound inside the walls, like something circulating. Then the temperature dropped even further. My breath fogged, the bathroom light flickered, and from somewhere above me, directly above the ceiling, I heard footsteps. Not in the hall, inside the room. Slow, deliberate, crossing back and forth. The sound stopped directly over the bed. Then something pressed down. Not hard enough to break through, just enough to bow the ceiling tile slightly. Testing. I lay there frozen, heart pounding, staring at the faint shadow forming overhead. The thermostat dialed on its own. The needle slid past the lowest marking and settled fully on the etched word. Now I could read it. Hold. The footsteps didn't resume. That was worse. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, every muscle locked, waiting for the next sound, the scrape, the crack, anything that would confirm what I was hearing was real. Instead, the room sank into a deep, unnatural quiet, the kind that presses against your ears until you start hearing your own blood move. The thermostat clicked, once, then again. The needle didn't move, but the air changed. It wasn't colder, it wasn't warmer either. It felt emptier, like the room had been hollowed out around me. I reached for my phone. No signal. Not one bar or searching, just nothing. The screen dimmed, then brightened again, as if trying and failing to connect to something that wasn't there anymore. That's when the bed shifted. Not a jolt, not a bounce, a slow, steady depression on the far side of the mattress, like someone carefully sitting down, testing weight. The blankets tightened across my legs. I did not move. I didn't breathe. The ceiling creaked softly above me again, answering the pressure below, as if whatever was there was no longer constrained by normal directions. Above, beside, beneath, the room seemed to forget which way was supposed to be up. A sound came from the bathroom. Not footsteps, water. The sink turned on by itself, the stream thin and uneven, splashing into the basin with a hollow echo. I could hear it overflowing, dripping onto tile, spreading. Then came the smell. Old water, metal, something stagnant that had been trapped too long behind walls. The bed dipped further. The blanket slid, inch by inch, tugged toward the center. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to count seconds, to stay anchored to something that still obeyed rules. 10, 20, 30. A whisper brushed my ear. Not breath, not voice, more like pressure shaped into sound. You stayed, it said. My eyes flew open. The room looked exactly the same. The bed was flat. The bathroom light was off. No water running. The ceiling tile smooth and intact. For a moment I thought I'd imagined everything. Then I saw the footprints. They were on the ceiling. Darkened impressions, shallow but unmistakable, leading from the far corner of the room to directly above the bed. Bare feet, too narrow, toes splayed slightly, as if gripping something that shouldn't be grippable. I screamed. The sound came out hoarse, ripped from somewhere deep in my chest, and echoed down the hallway beyond the door. The footprints moved. One lifted, another followed. They crossed above me, slow and careful, as if whatever owned them was learning the space. The room temperature plummeted. Frost bloomed across the window in jagged veins, crawling inward from the edges. My breath came out in sharp white bursts now, and I could feel the cold biting through layers of clothing and blankets like they weren't there at all. The thermostat dial spun, fast, then stopped. The word "hold" scraped itself deeper into the metal, grooves darkening as if freshly cut. The door handle rattled, once, twice, then the keycard reader beeped, green. The door swung open hard enough to bang against the wall. The front desk clerk stood there, face pale, eyes wide, holding a flashlight that shook in his hand. Behind him, the hallway lights flickered violently. "It's not supposed to wake up, not unless someone stays," he said. The footprints on the ceiling froze, then dropped. Not onto the bed, not onto the floor. They vanished mid-air, like something letting go. The temperature snapped back to normal so fast it made me gasp. The clerk grabbed my arm and hauled me into the hallway. "Do not look back," he said. I didn't. We made it halfway down the hall before the lights went out completely. In the dark behind us, I heard the bed creak, slowly, like someone settling in. I didn't go back for my bag. I didn't ask for a refund. I drove the rest of the night with the heater blasting and the radio loud enough to drown out my thoughts. Weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up the hotel online. The floor plan skipped from 212 to 216. No mention of 214. No photos of the end of the hallway. One recent review caught my eye. Heat was strange, but staff handled it quickly. Didn't feel right staying, though, like the room was waiting. I still check hotel ceilings before I sleep, especially in winter.
The first time I noticed it, I assumed I was tired. I'd been working county maintenance for almost a decade by then, long enough to know that winter shifts blur together. Same routes, same dark roads, same stretches where the snow seems to fall faster than you can clear it. You learn to trust routine, because routine is the only thing that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning with caffeine wearing off and the heater turned just low enough to keep the windshield from fogging. My route that season was a back road outside a small town in northern Wisconsin. Not a highway, not even a well-traveled county road, just a long, narrow stretch that cut through forest and low marshland before reconnecting with the main plowed grid. Locals called it Old Pine Spur. No houses, no businesses, no reason to be on it unless you lived there. And nobody lived there anymore. The county still paid to keep it clear because it technically connected 2 plow zones. It was easier than arguing with the state. That night, the snow was heavy and dry, the kind that squeaks under tires and piles up fast. Visibility came and went in waves. I'd already made 1 full pass up and down the spur, dropped salt on the worst curves, and logged it as clear. I turned back toward it 20 minutes later to double-check. That's when I saw fresh snow.
Not drifted, not blown in, a clean, even layer like it had never been touched. My own tire tracks were gone. I slowed the plow, leaning forward in my seat, squinting through the glare of the headlights. I knew I'd been there. The dash log confirmed it. Time-stamped, route complete. Still, the road ahead was pristine, smooth as a postcard. I chalked it up to wind and kept going. The blade scraped down, throwing snow to the shoulders in familiar white arcs. The engine hummed steady. The radio crackled with half-heard chatter from other trucks, everyone complaining about the storm, the hours, the cold. Halfway down the spur, my radio cut to static. That wasn't unusual either. The trees out there played hell with signal. What was unusual was the reflection. In my side mirror, behind the truck, I saw another set of headlights. Low, wide, matching my speed exactly. At first, I thought it was another plow, maybe someone reassigned without telling me. But county plows don't tail each other like that, and they sure as hell don't run dark. No amber strobes, no identification lights, just headlights, pale and steady, illuminating the snow I had just cleared. I keyed the mic. Unit 12 on Pine Spur, who's behind me? Static. Then, faintly, the sound of a blade scraping pavement. Not from my truck, from behind. My skin prickled under my thermal jacket. I sped up. The lights kept pace. I slowed. They slowed. When I stopped entirely, the lights stopped too, close enough that the snow between us glowed white, but far enough that I couldn't make out the shape of the vehicle itself. Probably a contractor, I muttered to myself, though I knew that was wrong. Contractors didn't run county routes without clearance. I finished the spur and turned back toward the main road. The headlights behind me turned too. At the junction where Old Pine Spur met the wider county road, I pulled off to the side and stopped hard, angling the plow to block the lane behind me. The headlights stopped again. Still no sound of an engine. I opened my door. Cold slammed into me like a wall. The wind carried that sharp pine and ice smell that burns the inside of your nose. "Hey," I called, "county road's clear. You don't need to be back here." No answer. I took a step closer. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. The snow behind my truck was untouched. No thrown piles, no salt scatter. Just smooth white, like my plow had never passed at all. The headlights flickered once, then went out. I stood there in the dark longer than I should have, listening. No engine winding down, no door opening, nothing. Eventually, common sense won out over curiosity. I got back in the truck, shut the door, and drove back to the yard, telling myself I'd imagined the whole thing. I filed no report. I finished my shift. I went home and slept like the dead. The next night, my supervisor reassigned me. Same route, same spur. I didn't argue. The storm hadn't stopped. Snow fell steady and deep, erasing the world in layers. When I reached Old Pine Spur again, my heart sank. Fresh snow, untouched, exactly like before. I radioed dispatch this time. "Has anyone cleared Pine Spur tonight?" A pause. "No," the dispatcher said. "That's yours. You just logged it clear an hour ago." My hands tightened on the wheel. "I'm looking at it now. It's not clear." Another pause. Longer. That road was decommissioned, she said carefully, years ago. I laughed, sharp and uneasy. Then why am I plowing it? Silence. Unit 12, she said finally. Can you confirm your location? I glanced at the GPS mounted to the dash. The screen was blank. Not frozen, blank. I looked up. The road ahead stretched longer than it should have, trees leaning in on both sides, branches heavy with snow, forming a tunnel that swallowed my headlights before they could reach the end. Behind me, reflected faintly in the glass, two pale lights appeared. Closer this time.
Story 6. The lake that freezes over before anyone drowns. The rescue call came in just after dawn, when the sky is still gray and the cold feels sharper because your body hasn't decided it's awake yet. I was a volunteer with the County Search and Rescue Unit in upstate New York, mostly handling winter water incidents. Snowmobilers through weak ice, drunk fishermen, kids who wandered too far from shore. The call sheet always looked the same. This one didn't. Location, Lake Bracken. Incident type, possible submersion. Caller, unknown. Lake Bracken isn't big. It's not scenic. No cabins, no bait shops. Just a shallow bowl of water tucked behind state forest land, ignored most of the year. Locals know it freezes early because it's fed by cold springs underneath. The ice there thickens fast. Too fast. That's why the report didn't make sense. By the time we arrived, the lake was already sealed over. Smooth, opaque ice stretching from bank to bank. No open water, no broken surface, no signs of recent activity. But the caller insisted someone had gone under. We found footprints leading from the access road down to the shoreline. One set, adult-sized, no return prints. At the edge of the ice, the snow thinned, wind scoured into hard crust. A few feet out, there was a darker patch beneath the surface, visible through the cloudy ice like a shadow trapped below. We marked the spot. Protocol says you don't cut ice until you're sure. We drilled test holes first. 8 inches thick, then 9, then 10. Ice that strong doesn't form overnight, not with extreme cold, and the night before had barely dipped below freezing. One of the older guys shifted uneasily. He said, "Looks like refreeze." Refreeze means the ice broke earlier, water flooded up, then froze again. It can happen fast in shallow lakes, but it leaves signs, slush layers, bubbles, fracture lines. This ice was clean, too clean. We cut anyway. The chainsaw screamed as the blade bit into the surface, spraying ice chips across the snow, the smell of gas mixed with cold air and pine. When the square finally broke free, we pried it up and slid it aside. Black water stared back at us. Still, no ripples, no current. We lowered a pole camera into the hole, its cable stiff from cold. The screen flickered, then stabilized. At first, we saw nothing but silt and weeds swaying gently at the bottom. Then the camera angle shifted, and the light caught something pale. A hand, not floating, resting on the lake bed, palm up, fingers slightly curled. The camera dipped lower. The body was intact, fully clothed, eyes open, face calm, like someone lying down for a nap. The timestamp on the footage showed less than 6 hours since the call. In water that cold, the body should have shown shock, panic, damage. Instead, it looked preserved. The diver we called in surfaced 20 minutes later, breathing hard. She said, "There's no trauma, no sign of struggle." She paused. "And the ice above him is older than the rest, thicker, like it formed first." That's when the dispatcher radioed back. They'd traced the original call. It hadn't come from a phone tower. It had come from a landline, registered to an address that didn't exist anymore. A farmhouse torn down in the 90s, right where Lake Bracken now sat. The man we pulled out had no ID, no wallet, no record. But when they finally ran facial recognition, a match came back. Missing, declared drowned in Lake Bracken 32 years ago. Same spot, same depth, same calm expression. The report was sealed, the footage archived, and every winter since, the first time the lake freezes solid, someone calls in a drowning.
Always before anyone breaks the ice, always before there's an opening. They stopped sending divers after the 3rd year. Now they just mark the coordinates, log it as unfounded, and wait for spring. But if you walk the lake in early winter, before the snow piles up, you can see it. A darker circle beneath the ice, right where the water froze first, like the lake remembers who belongs underneath. The rescue call came in just after dawn, when the sky is still gray and the cold feels sharper because your body hasn't decided it's awake yet. I was a volunteer with the County Search and Rescue Unit in upstate New York, mostly handling winter water incidents. Snowmobilers through weak ice, drunk fishermen, kids who wandered too far from shore. The call sheet always looked the same. This one didn't. Location: Lake Bracken. Incident type: possible submersion. Caller: unknown. Lake Bracken isn't big. It's not scenic. No cabins, no bait shops, just a shallow bowl of water tucked behind state forest land, ignored most of the year. Locals know it freezes early because it's fed by cold springs underneath. The ice there thickens fast, too fast. That's why the report didn't make sense. By the time we arrived, the lake was already sealed over, smooth, opaque ice stretching from bank to bank. No open water, no broken surface, no signs of recent activity. But the caller insisted someone had gone under. We found footprints leading from the access road down to the shoreline. One set, adult-sized, no return prints. At the edge of the ice, the snow thinned, wind scoured into hard crust. A few feet out, there was a darker patch beneath the surface, visible through the cloudy ice like a shadow trapped below. We marked the spot. Protocol says you don't cut ice unless you're sure. We drilled test holes first. 8 inches thick, then 9, then 10. ice that strong doesn't form overnight, not with extreme cold, and the night before had barely dipped below freezing. One of the older guys shifted uneasily. "Looks like refreeze," he said. Refreeze means the ice broke earlier, water flooded up, then froze again. It can happen fast in shallow lakes, but it leaves signs, slush layers, bubbles, fracture lines. This ice was clean, too clean. We cut anyway. The chainsaw screamed as the blade bit into the surface, spraying ice chips across the snow, the smell of gas mixed with cold air and pine. When the square finally broke free, we pried it up and slid it aside. Black water stared back at us, still, no ripples, no current. We lowered a pole camera into the hole, its cable stiff from cold. The screen flickered, then stabilized. At first we saw nothing but silt and weeds swaying gently at the bottom. Then the camera angle shifted and the light caught something pale. A hand, not floating, resting on the lake bed, palm up, fingers slightly curled. The camera dipped lower. The body was intact, fully clothed, eyes open, face calm, like someone lying down for a nap. The timestamp on the footage showed less than 6 hours since the call. In water that cold, the body should have shown shock, panic, damage. Instead, it looked preserved. The diver we called in surfaced 20 minutes later, breathing hard. "There's no trauma," she said. "No sign of struggle." She paused. "And the ice above him is older than the rest, thicker, like it formed first." That's when the dispatcher radioed back. They'd traced the original call. It hadn't come from a tower. It had come from a landline, registered to an address that didn't exist anymore. A farmhouse torn down in the 90s, right where Lake Bracken now sat. The man we pulled out had no ID, no wallet, no record. But when they finally ran facial recognition, a match came back. Missing, declared drowned in Lake Bracken 32 years ago. Same spot, same depth, same calm expression. The report was sealed, the archive archived, and every winter since, the first time the lake freezes solid, someone calls in a drowning. Always before anyone breaks the ice, always before there's an opening. They stopped sending divers after the 3rd year. Now they just mark the coordinates, log it as unfounded, and wait for spring. But if you walk the lake in early winter, before the snow piles up, you can see it. A darker circle beneath the ice, right where the water froze first, like the lake remembers who belongs underneath. Story 7. The town that only appears during whiteouts. The first time I drove through it, I didn't realize I had crossed any kind of boundary. I was hauling medical supplies west across eastern Wyoming, running a late delivery because a storm had already shut down the interstate earlier that afternoon. By the time the plows reopened one lane, the sky was the color of unlit steel and the wind had teeth. My dispatcher told me to take the county road shortcut if the highway closed again. I did. The whiteout hit 10 minutes later. Not gradually, not politely. One moment I could see fence posts ticking by in the beam of my headlights. The next, the world collapsed into swirling white, so thick it felt solid. I slowed to a crawl, hazard lights blinking uselessly into the storm. Then the road dipped. My tires hummed differently, the sound changing as if the surface beneath them had smoothed out. The steering wheel stopped tugging against crosswind. The wind itself seemed to thin, less violent, less angry. Shapes emerged ahead. Lights. Street lights. I blinked hard, convinced my eyes were inventing things to cope with the strain, but the lights stayed. I rolled forward into a small town. Not a gas station or a single outpost, the kind of place you expect on a county road, but a real town. 2-lane Main Street, snow-buried sidewalks, storefronts with names painted in block letters that looked decades old, a diner, a hardware store, a post office with a flag frozen stiff on its pole. Everything was covered in snow. Everything was lit, and there were no cars moving. I parked without really deciding to. The truck idled, engine ticking softly. When I stepped out, the cold felt different, still sharp but not cutting. The wind had dropped to nothing. The silence was total. The diner's door was unlocked. A bell chimed softly as I stepped inside. Warmth wrapped around me immediately, fogging my glasses. The smell of coffee and grease was so real it made my stomach ache. A woman stood behind the counter, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. She didn't look surprised to see me. "Whiteout caught you," she said, not a question. "Yeah," I replied. "Didn't know there was a town out here." She smiled faintly. "There isn't. Not most days." That should have been my cue to leave. Instead, I took a seat. The diner was full in a quiet way. A handful of people sat at booths, coats still on, hands wrapped around mugs. None of them spoke. None of them looked at me. The clock above the counter read 2:17. It didn't move. "Road'll open back up soon," the woman said, sliding a cup toward me. "It always does." I took a sip. The coffee was hot enough to sting. "How soon?" I asked. "When it's ready." I noticed then that no one had phones out, no screens glowing, no music playing, just the low hum of heat and the occasional creak of the buildings settling. A man at the far booth finally looked up. "You passing through?" he asked. "Yeah." He nodded once. "Don't stay longer than you have to." Before I could ask what he meant, the bell over the door chimed again. A gust of snow blew in, and with it a woman carrying a child bundled so tightly I could barely see her face. The woman's coat was rimmed with frost. Her hair was wet, frozen in places. "Road closed?" she asked the room. The man at the booth shook his head slowly. "Road's open," he said. "It just doesn't lead where you think." The woman tightened her grip on the child. "I just need to wait it out, just until it passes." The woman behind the counter stopped smiling. "No," she said gently, "you don't." That's when I realized something was wrong with the windows. The snow outside wasn't moving, frozen mid-swirling arc like a photograph suspended in glass. I stood up. "I think I should go," I said. The woman behind a counter nodded, relief flickering across her face. "Yes," she said, "you should." The man at the booth met my eyes. "Follow your tracks. Do not make new ones." My coffee cup was empty. I didn't remember finishing it. When I stepped back outside, the town looked dimmer, like the lights were being turned down slowly. Snow crunched under my boots, and I saw my footprints clearly, leading back toward where the road should be. Another set of footprints crossed them, small, bare, leading toward the post office. I did not follow them. I got in my truck and drove exactly in my own tracks, white knuckles on the wheel, refusing to look left or right. The whiteout swallowed me again. When I finally broke free, the county road stretched ahead, empty and familiar, fence posts reappearing one by one. My GPS chimed, recalculating like nothing unusual had happened. I pulled over and checked the time. 2:19 a.m. 2 minutes had passed. I finished the delivery and drove home in silence. A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I searched maps, archives, county records. There has never been a town on that road, but every few decades during major winter storms, dispatch logs show a cluster of calls rerouted through the same non-existent location. Vehicles that stop reporting for minutes, sometimes hours. Most of them come back, some don't. And every time the storm clears, the plows report something strange. Extra tracks, leading into the snow and stopping in the middle of the road. The thing that kept bothering me wasn't the town itself, it was the people. They hadn't felt like ghosts, they hadn't felt threatening. If anything, they felt tired, like people who had been waiting for something to finish for a very long time. I tried to put it out of my head. I went back to my normal routes, my normal nights. Winter deliveries blur together after a while. Truck stops, rest areas, white lines dissolving under falling snow. But the storms kept lining up. Every time a major system moved through eastern Wyoming, I felt it in my bones before the forecast said anything. My chest would tighten. I'd catch myself gripping the wheel harder than necessary. Once, I even found myself slowing down automatically near the same stretch of road, heart hammering, even though visibility was fine. I told myself it was stress. Then, 3 weeks later, dispatch called me in.
They wanted a statement. Another driver, new guy, early 20s, had gone missing during a whiteout on the same county road. His last transmission cut off mid-sentence. Plows found his truck hours later, engine cold, parked neatly on the shoulder. No sign of him. No footprints leading away. No indication he'd slid or crashed. Just gone. When the supervisor asked if I'd ever seen anything strange out there, my mouth went dry. I lied. I said no. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I found myself staring out my apartment window at the empty street below. Snow drifted lazily under the streetlight. The world felt muted, suspended. I checked the time. 2:17. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Roads open. I didn't respond. Another message came through. You did the right thing leaving. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I checked the number again. No caller ID. No location. Just text. I blocked it. The next storm came fast. Blizzard warnings, interstate closures, mandatory reroutes. Dispatch begged anyone available to take emergency runs. I told myself I wouldn't. I told myself I didn't need the overtime. But when you've been driving as long as I have, roads start to feel like obligations, like unfinished sentences. I took the run. As soon as I turned onto the county road, the snow thickened unnaturally, as if the storm had been waiting. Visibility collapsed within seconds.
I slowed. My headlights caught something reflective ahead. Streetlights. My breath hitched. I didn't stop this time. I drove straight through. The town appeared anyway. Same buildings, same diner, same post office, but something was different. More lights were out. Snow had piled higher against the storefronts, almost swallowing their signs. A car sat half-buried near the diner, door hanging open, interior light glowing weakly. I passed it. The road narrowed. My GPS went blank. Then the engine coughed. Once. Twice. I slammed the brakes and skidded to a stop just as the truck died completely. Silence. The storm outside froze again, snow suspended in midair like dust caught in sunlight. Someone knocked on my window. I screamed. The woman from the diner stood there, her face pale, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "You weren't supposed to come back," she said. "I didn't stop," I whispered through the glass. "I swear, I didn't stop." She nodded slowly. "I know." She gestured behind her. Across the street, more people stood in the snow. Dozens, some in winter coats, some in hospital gowns, some barefoot, feet blue and cracked. None of them cast shadows. They come in during storms, accidents, detours, bad choices, sometimes just bad luck. What is this place? Her eyes flicked toward the frozen horizon. A pause. The child from before stood near the post office, staring at me. Her eyes were too old. They don't all leave. Most don't even realize they've arrived. I shook my head violently. "I'm not staying," she said again, softer now. "But you need help." She pressed her palm against my window. The glass frosted instantly under her touch. "Follow your tracks, and when you see the lights again, don't look at them." The engine roared back to life on its own. The woman stepped away. The town dimmed. As I drove forward, I felt something brush the side of the truck, fingers dragging lightly along the metal, searching. I didn't look. I followed my own tire tracks exactly, hands shaking, teeth clenched, praying I wouldn't miss a turn. The whiteout swallowed everything. When I broke through, dawn was just starting to stain the sky gray. The road behind me was empty. Later that day, dispatch called again. They'd found the missing driver. Alive. Walking barefoot along the interstate, hypothermic, confused, insisting he'd only stopped for coffee. He couldn't remember where. I quit long-haul deliveries that week. I drive local now, daylight only. But every winter, right around 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzes. Unknown number. Same message. Roads open. Story 8. The Cabin That Answered Back. I didn't plan to stay the night. That's important. I was driving across northern Wisconsin in late January, trying to beat a storm that was already catching up with me. The sky had that dull, low ceiling that makes everything feel closer than it should, and the snow was falling just heavy enough to erase the edges of the road. The GPS lost signal about 10 minutes after I turned off the highway. Not unusual out there. I kept going, counting mile markers, telling myself I'd reach the next town before it got bad. I didn't. The road narrowed, the plows clearly hadn't been through, and then I saw the cabin. Single structure, set back from the road maybe 30 yards, one light on inside. I slowed without really deciding to. The car slipped slightly when I tried to correct, tires spinning just enough to make the decision for me. I eased onto the shoulder and shut the engine off, listening to it tick as it cooled. I told myself I'd knock, ask to use a phone, maybe wait until the worst of the storm passed. That was all. The path to the cabin was already half filled with snow, no clear footprints leading to or from the door. The light inside flickered as I approached, warm and steady in a way that made the cold feel sharper by contrast. I knocked once. Nothing. I knocked again, harder. The light flicked off. For a moment I thought I'd imagined it. Then the porch light came on instead, bathing the steps in a pale yellow glow. The door opened just a crack. A woman looked out at me, mid-40s maybe, hair pulled back, thick sweater. Her expression wasn't surprised. "You shouldn't be out in this," she said. "I know. I'm sorry. My GPS went out and—" "You can stay until it passes, but you need to come in now." Something about the way she said "now" made me move without arguing. The cabin was warmer than I expected, not just heated, but lived in. There were boots by the door, coats on hooks, a pot simmering softly on the stove. The smell of soup filled the air. "Sit," she said, nodding to the table. I did. She poured me a bowl without asking what I wanted, then took a seat across from me, hands folded. "What's your name?" she asked. I told her. She nodded once, as if confirming something. "You're the third this winter." "Third what?" "Driver." I smiled politely, waiting for the rest of the explanation. It didn't come. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows. Snow hissed against the walls, steady and relentless. The soup was good, hot, salty, grounding. My shoulders finally started to relax. Then I noticed something odd. There was no sound from anywhere else in the cabin. No refrigerator hum, no ticking clock, no creak of settling wood. Just the storm and her breathing. "Do you live out here alone?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, "Not exactly." She stood and walked to the window, peering out into the snow. I followed her gaze. My car was gone. Not buried, not obscured. Gone. The road, too. In its place, a smooth, unbroken field of snow stretched out between the trees, untouched, pristine. "That's not possible," I said, standing up too fast. She turned to face me, and for the first time her expression changed. Not angry, concerned. "You heard it answer you, didn't you?" she asked. "What?" "The cabin," she said softly, "when you knocked." I opened my mouth to deny it, then stopped. I hadn't thought about it at the time, but there had been a sound. Not footsteps, not the latch turning. Something deeper, like the walls themselves had shifted. "I need to leave," I said. She shook her head. "Not until it's done." The lights dimmed. The stove went cold. Outside, the storm intensified. Snow rising now instead of falling, spiraling upward around the cabin like it was being drawn in. I backed towards the door. The door knocked back. 3 sharp raps from the inside. The woman didn't move.
"It knows you're here now," she said quietly. "It won't let you go until it hears you answer." The knocking came again, closer, from the walls, from the floor, from behind me. I don't remember screaming, but my throat burned afterwards, so I must have. I don't remember opening the door either. I remember cold. I remember falling. I remember waking up in my car, engine still running, headlights cutting through the falling snow on a narrow road. The GPS flickered back to life. No cabin, no tracks, no explanation. The storm passed an hour later. A week after that, I searched county records. There had been a cabin there once, collapsed under snow load 14 years ago. A woman had survived. 3 drivers had not. And every winter when the storms get bad enough, someone reports knocking on a door that answers before it's opened.
Story 9. The campsite that reused names. I noticed the sign because it had my name on it. Not exactly my name, but close enough that my eyes snagged on it as I drove past. Reserved, E. Carter. I slowed instinctively, tires crunching over packed snow, and glanced again to make sure I hadn't imagined it. Same letters, same spacing, burned into a wooden post at the entrance to a small winter campsite just off a Forest Service road in northern Michigan. I told myself it was coincidence. It had to be. I was only out there for one night. Solo trip, nothing ambitious, just a chance to clear my head after a rough few months. The campground was technically closed for the season, but a handful of sites remained accessible if you knew where to look. Apparently, someone else did too. I parked anyway. The campsite was empty. No vehicle, no footprints beyond my own. The snow was smooth and untouched, the fire ring filled in and capped with ice. The trees around the clearing stood tall and bare, their branches creaking softly as the wind moved through them. I set up my tent near the tree line, far enough from the road to feel secluded. As the light faded, the woods grew quiet in that deep winter way, sound swallowed by snow and cold. That was when I heard my name. Not shouted, spoken, softly from somewhere beyond the trees. Evan? I froze, breath catching halfway out. I hadn't told anyone exactly where I was going. No one should have been anywhere near that site, let alone close enough to speak quietly and be heard. "Hello?" I called back, hating how thin my voice sounded. No answer. I told myself it was the wind, the way sound carries strangely in winter. The way your brain fills in gaps when you're alone too long. I went back to setting up camp. An hour later, after dark had fully settled in, I noticed something else. Another sign. This one was smaller, nailed to a tree at the edge of the clearing, half hidden by snow-dusted branches. Carter. Site 12. My stomach tightened. There wasn't a Site 12. The campground only had 8 marked spots. I'd checked the map before coming. I walked closer, flashlight beam trembling slightly. The wood was old, weathered, the letters faded but legible. Behind it, deeper in the trees, I caught a glimpse of reflective metal. Another sign, then another, each with the same name, my name. Different handwriting, different styles, some carved, some painted, some burned in. All of them pointing inward toward the woods. I backed away slowly. That's when I heard movement. Footsteps. Not crunching, not rushing. Careful, measured, matching my pace as I retreated toward my tent. "Evan?" the voice said again, closer this time. It didn't sound threatening. It sounded familiar, like someone who'd said my name 1,000 times before. I spun around, flashlight sweeping wildly. Nothing. But when I turned back, my tent was open. The zipper hung loose, fabric stirring gently in the wind. Inside, my sleeping bag had been unrolled. Someone had placed my boots neatly side by side near the entrance, facing outward, like they were waiting to be stepped into. I didn't think. I grabbed my keys and ran. I didn't bother packing, didn't bother closing anything up. I sprinted through knee-deep snow toward my truck, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might choke me. The engine started on the first try. As I threw it into reverse, my headlights swept across the clearing. There were footprints now. Dozens of them, all leading away from the trees, all converging on my campsite, all stopping just short of the fire ring. No tracks leading back. I drove until I hit pavement. I didn't stop shaking until morning. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up old records for that campground. It took some digging, but eventually I found it. A list of winter fatalities going back decades. Exposure, lost hikers, single vehicle accidents nearby. One detail stood out. More than half of them shared the same first name as me. Different years, different ages, same campsite, same last name initial. The campground was shut down permanently the following spring. The official reason cited structural decay and low usage, but locals called it something else. They said the land didn't like learning new names, so it reused the ones it already knew, and every winter it kept calling them back.